forward thanks to his intensive work in the city of Houston after Hurricane Harvey. So it's no wonder why Watt might be a little sensitive to people critiquing athletes for their desire to give back to their communities. Watt took to Twitter to respond to a tweet from the Nation's Dave Zirin with a quote from the Ringer's Mike Lombardi about quarterback Josh Rosen needing to choose between being a humanitarian or a football player. Watt tweeting this is just as dumb as the shut up and dribble comment. Right or wrong, athletes are some of the most recognizable people in the country. That is an extremely powerful platform that so many use to do great things in the community. Who wouldn't want that? Hashtag more than an athlete. Stephen A., your reaction to this whole thing?
Well, my reaction is to side with J.J. Watt because I think he has an incredibly powerful point, particularly considering what is asked of the professional athlete in this day and age and the day and age of years past. The reality is that athletes, being who they are, have been thrusted into the role model role per se, and as a result, we've used it to hold them accountable in terms of their on-field, inside locker rooms, and off-field behavior. So if you're going to hold them accountable for all of those things, then why sit up there and lament the fact that they're exercising things in a very positive fashion off the field? If you're going to hold them accountable, for negative things that they do, why not give them credibility and praise when they do positive things off the field? So I completely and utterly and totally agree with J.J. Watt in that front from a generic perspective. But if the analysts were talking specifically about the individual that is Josh Rosen, with the kind of things that have been said about him in terms of his focus, in terms of the ability or lack thereof to coach him, in terms of his temperament and what's going to be asked of and required from him based on his individual behavior, then I would ask J.J. Watt how well you know Josh Rosen before making such a statement. Again, I completely side with J.J. Watt if he's talking about that statement being generically applied to professional athletes, because I think they're wrong. But if they're talking about Josh Rosen based on what they're getting from NFL personnel about this kid's temperament, his mentality, his production or lack thereof, his focus or lack thereof, then I think you have an entirely different situation to take into consideration.
Yeah, I totally agree with J.J. Watt here. And this applies to Josh Rosen, too, for all I know. I know there's talk about him not being as focused as he should be on football. And I understand that people like the idea of Tom Brady, or I think Andrew Luck falls into this category. They give you the sense that if you opened their head and looked inside, you would see a football there. Like the brain is actually made, the matter is made of football somehow. And I get that. Why not have the guy totally focused? But there are plenty of examples to the contrary. You know, Aaron Rodgers doesn't appear that to me to be the kind of guy where the only thing he's thinking about is football. I think he's the best who ever did it. Steve Young seems to have interests that are not just football. Russell Wilson gives you the impression of a guy who has the football in the brain, except, by the way, he's in the Yankee system right now. He's at spring training. He's playing some baseball. Even if it's sports, it's still another sport. I think the idea is that, particularly in football, this applies. We are accustomed to liking especially the quarterback, to have a one-track mind. If he has things on his mind other than football, we like the idea of religion because it's a rigid system of thinking, and it can be applied to the sport. We like the idea of military, the same sort of thing. Some kind of system of thought that feels to us like football. You obey the rules. You self-sacrifice, you work for the greater good. We like that sort of thing. But if it involves thinking a little bit too much or being too much of an individual or something that doesn't fit neatly into the paradigm that we've constructed, then all of a sudden people have questions. I think if you look at the actual evidence, though, you'll find there are plenty of great quarterbacks who don't hew so closely to this kind of ideal that people have of the kind of stuff a quarterback's supposed to be thinking about.
Max, I'm going to disagree with you slightly there, and I think I'm going to win you over on this. You know, one of the reasons why I believe these teams and their personnel have a problem with some of the things these guys do off the field? Because they want you sold completely on what they want you sold on. They literally want to dominate your life. literally. I mean, everything about what you do, you're as an athlete, you're holding the livelihoods of coaches, executives, etc., in the palm of your hands. If you go out there and you don't perform and don't validate their prowess as decision makers, they're going to pay a price for it. So because of that, they want to literally monopolize as much as they possibly can everything involving your life, to milk and soak everything out of you that they can possibly get a hold of to maximize your potential, thereby validating their faith in you and securing and thereby elevating their quality of life. This is what I think it comes down to, more so than anything else.
To add to that thought, I understand what you mean. To add to that thought, A.J. Liebling, the great boxing writer, wrote The Sweet Science, said boxing is chess played on human bodies. It's not really, because if it's one-on-one, if one fighter has some physical advantages, that can be played out very quickly. Football is chess played on human bodies, and the players are the coaches. That's why in football, the idea of an obedient soldier is so sought after by talent evaluators and team constructors. Different in baseball, different in basketball, different in other team sports.
Yeah, I think Lombardi's saying he wants them to eat, breathe, and sleep football, and J.J. Watt saying we're not one-trick pony. We can do more. We can do both. Got to leave it there, guys. Up next, Seth Greenberg joins us to debate whether or not the NCAA should be sharing more of that $1 billion revenue pot with the players. First Take rolls on.
Sitting at my house.
If you had the Mona Lisa